Welcome. In today's video, we're diving into the top 5 fastest checkmate traps you can catch your opponents with. Quick and deadly. Let's jump right in. Number 5, the Budapest smothered mate. We start with pawn to d4, knight to f6, pawn to c4, and then pawn to e5. Black is saying, go ahead, take my pawn on e5, I'm giving it to you. Of course, this comes with complications. White takes the pawn, with pawn takes e5, and now black plays knight to g4, moving the knight out of danger while also attacking the e5 pawn. White wants to keep the pawn they just captured, so they play knight to f3, defending it. Now black needs to attack the pawn again, or they'll just get kicked away. So, knight to c6, attacking the pawn once more and saying, give me my pawn back, and I'll develop at the same time. But white refuses. They play bishop to f4, defending the pawn twice. Now it's attacked twice and defended twice, but if white ever captures first, they'll end up losing a piece. And this is where things start to get interesting. So, black plays bishop to b4 check, which is a great move, developing a piece while also forcing white to react. You should always look for moves like this in every game. Now, white needs to find a way to defend. If knight to c3, sure, it blocks the check, but white ends up with doubled pawns, which isn't ideal. If bishop back to d2, then the e5 pawn is hanging. If knight back to d2, same problem, the e5 pawn is still hanging. And if queen to d2, black simply takes the queen, which is a disaster for white. So instead, white usually plays knight b to d2, keeping both the knight and the bishop on the same squares to defend the pawn, but black still wants to win that pawn. So how do they do it? Easy, queen to e7. Now black attacks the e5 pawn for the third time, while white only has 2 defenders. That means black is going to win the pawn. So white realizes they can't do much about losing the e5 pawn, but at least they can get the bishop pair. So they play pawn to a3, attacking the bishop. And this is where the magic happens. You might be wondering, where's the checkmate? How can black possibly checkmate with all these pieces around the king? Well, get ready, because we're about to show you. It's black to move. Pause the video if you need to, but here it is. Knight takes e5. That's a massive move. At first, it might not even make sense. Why would black take a pawn when their bishop is under attack? What's the idea behind this? Well, let's see what happens next. If white captures the bishop with pawn takes b4, can you find the move? Pause the video and think black to move. The checkmate is coming, a beautiful smothered mate knight to d3. Number 4, the England Gambit mate. This one is called the England Gambit mate, and it's very similar to the Budapest Gambit. Let's see how it works. We start with pawn to d4, and black immediately plays pawn to e5, just like in the Budapest Gambit. White, of course, says, you're giving me a free pawn? I'll take it, and captures with pawn takes e5. Boom. Thank you very much. Now black wants to get the pawn back, but instead of developing a knight, black plays queen to e7 right away. This is a bit unusual since the queen is blocking the bishop, unlike in the Budapest Gambit, where the bishop comes out to b4 check. After queen to e7, white plays knight to f3, defending the pawn. Now black needs to attack it again. Otherwise, what's the plan? So black develops with knight to c6, attacking the e5 pawn not once, but twice now. White, of course, does what we've seen before in the Budapest Gambit. They simply defend the pawn again, because if they don't, they're just giving black free material. But this is where things start getting really interesting. So, white defends with bishop to f4, but here comes the trick. After bishop to f4, black plays queen to b4 check, a triple attack. Not only is white's king in check, but the bishop on f4 is under attack, and the pawn on b2 is also being targeted. White now has a decision to make. They realize that if they play pawn to c3 or move their knight, black will simply capture the bishop on f4. Blocking with the queen could run into dangerous tactics involving queen to b2 followed by bishop to b4, which could get really scary. So instead, white plays bishop to e2, thinking, I'm totally fine here. I'll just step back and avoid losing my bishop. Plus, if you take my pawn on b2, I'll be able to attack your queen. But black continues with queen takes b2, attacking the rook on a1. And now, black gets exactly what they wanted. Bishop to c3. This move does 2 things at once. It attacks black's queen while also defending the rook on a1. That last move was a blunder, and now white is in big trouble. After bishop to c3, black plays bishop to b4, a fantastic move. Instead of moving the queen, black goes on the offensive, attacking white's bishop while still defending the queen. And white can't capture the bishop on b4 because their king is pinned, completely stuck. White thinks they have everything under control and plays queen to d2, saying, I'm fine now. But they're about to get a big surprise. Now black plays bishop to c3 and the game ends on the spot. How is that possible? If white captures with knight takes c3, it's game over. Black simply plays queen takes a1 and white loses decisive material. Resignation is the only option. That's why white placed the queen on d2, to stop this. But here comes the final mistake. If white plays queen takes c3, it's a double blunder. Why? Because now black delivers checkmate. Queen to c1, checkmate. Another England Gambit trap, and we got them. Number 3, the Owens defense fool's mate pattern. This one is a fun trap that can catch your opponent off guard. Let's check it out. We start with pawn to e4, and black responds with pawn to b6, a strange-looking move, but it's a playable defense called the Owens defense. Sometimes you even see similar ideas in the French defense. White takes the full center with pawn to d4, and black continues with bishop to b7. White develops naturally with bishop to d3, which is a great way to play against the Owens defense. Now here comes the trap. Black plays pawn to f5, which looks a little wild, but actually has some logic behind it. However, white takes advantage right away with pawn takes f5. Black confidently plays bishop takes g2, thinking they've won material. Boom, gotcha. Except, it's actually a trap. White immediately responds with queen to h5 check. Now black is in trouble. At first they think, no problem, I can defend. So they play pawn to g6, thinking they have blocked the check and will win big material next move. But this is exactly what white wanted. Now comes pawn takes g6. Boom! The trap is fully set. White is completely winning here. We're threatening checkmate on g7, and at the same time, we're attacking multiple pieces. This is a very cool checkmate pattern, but black tries to escape. They play knight to f6. A blunder. At first, it looks like a clever move. The knight attacks the queen, and if white pushes pawn to g7, black can actually take the queen. That seems annoying. If white moves the queen, black can also grab the rook on h1. But white has an outstanding move here. Pawn to g7 check. Oh my goodness, unstoppable. Black realizes the queen is still hanging, but if they take it, white simply plays knight takes h5. Thank you very much. Now, can you spot the final move? Black never even got a chance to take the rook on h1 because the game is already over. Bishop to g6, checkmate. And that is the Owens defense fool's mate pattern. A brutal and beautiful finish. Number 2. The Italian game smothered mate, also known as the Blackbird Shilling Gambit. This is a tricky trap for black that comes out of the Italian game. Let's dive in. We start with pawn to e4, pawn to e5, standard opening moves, knight to f3, knight to c6, a position you've probably seen hundreds of times, then bishop to c4, developing naturally into the Italian game. But now, black plays something unexpected. Knight to d4. Wait, what? You've probably never seen this move before. It looks like black is just moving the same knight twice and giving up the e5 pawn. White, thinking this is just a blunder, happily takes the bait, knight takes e5, grabbing the free pawn. And now, boom, queen to g5. This is where the trap begins. The queen attacks the knight on e5 and the pawn on g2 at the same time. White starts getting confused. What is black doing here? But white still feels confident and plays knight takes f7 anyway, forking the queen and the rook. At first, this looks like a winning move for white, but in reality, they've just fallen for a huge trap. Yeah, white thinks they're winning with knight takes f7, forking the queen and rook. But black counters with queen takes g2, attacking the rook and e4, a double attack. White tries to defend, moving the rook, but black has already won. Black plays pawn to e4 check, and white's options to block are doomed. The bishop to e2 move doesn't save them. This is the Italian game smothered mate. The final move is knight to f3, checkmate, number 1, the Caro-Kann smothered mate. In the Caro-Kann defense, after e4, c6, white usually plays pawn to d4. After pawn to d5 and knight to c3, black plays pawn takes e4, and white captures back with knight takes e4. Black continues with knight to d7, aiming to develop, and white plays queen to e2. Black then plays knight to f6, but here's where it goes wrong. White plays knight to d6, and it's smothered mate. Game over. Thanks for watching.